The chamber was massive beyond human comprehension. It floated in the void of space, orbiting a world that existed only for peace and diplomacy. Inside, representatives from 47 different alien species sat in their designated sections. Each section was designed for the specific needs of that species. Some sat in water-filled tanks, others floated in gas clouds. A few existed as pure energy, contained in special fields. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood in the center of it all. She was alone. Her people had told her she could bring advisors, but she refused. If humanity was going to be judged, she would face that judgment by herself. She wore a simple black suit, the kind diplomats on Earth had worn for centuries. Her dark hair was pulled back tight. Her face showed no emotion, though her heart was racing. Above her, the council leader spoke. His name was impossible for human tongues to pronounce, so everyone called him First Speaker. He was a Zathan, a species that looked like floating crystals that constantly shifted colors. When he spoke, his words came through translators that every species wore or had implanted. "We gather today for a matter of grave importance," First Speaker said. His voice was calm, almost sad. "Humanity has been part of our Galactic Council for 23 standard years. In that short time, they have caused more disruption than any species in the past 1,000 years." Sarah felt anger rise in her chest, but she forced it down. She had practiced for this moment. Show nothing. Give them nothing. "The charges are clear," First Speaker continued. "First, humanity has shared advanced technology with primitive species, violating our most sacred law of non-interference. Second, they refuse to fully disarm their military vessels despite treaty agreements. Third, their cultural exports have caused social disruption across 17 member worlds. Around the chamber, alien representatives made sounds of agreement. Some clicked their mandibles, others pulsed with light. A few released chemical signals that Sarah's translator interpreted as approval. A representative from the Korsian Empire stood. The Korsian looked like enormous crabs covered in metallic shells. "We have evidence," the representative said. "Human ships were detected in the Yala system. That system is protected. The species there are still in their industrial age. Yet humans gave them medical technology that has disrupted their natural development." Sarah wanted to scream. The Yala were dying from a plague. Humanity had saved 3 billion lives, but she stayed quiet. It wasn't time yet. Another representative spoke, this one from the Valerian Collective. Valerians were telepathic beings that looked like tall, thin humanoids with smooth gray skin. Human entertainment programs have infiltrated our youth networks. These programs promote violence, chaotic thinking, and individual desire over collective good. Our children now question authority. They want adventure. They reject the peace we have built. More sounds of agreement echoed through the chamber. A third voice joined in. This one belonged to a Matherian, a species of energy beings who rarely spoke in council. "Humans are dangerous because they cannot be predicted. Every other species in this council thinks in patterns we understand. Humans think in chaos. They plan for disasters that may never happen. They create weapons they hope never to use. They are a warrior species pretending to be civilized." Sarah's jaw tightened. 23 years. That's all humanity had been given. 23 years to prove themselves among species that had been spacefaring for thousands of years. They had made mistakes, yes, but they had also contributed. Human doctors had developed new medical techniques. Human engineers had improved ship designs. Human artists had created works that moved even alien hearts. None of that seemed to matter now. First Speaker's crystals dimmed, a sign of regret among his people. "Ambassador Chen, you may now speak in humanity's defense." Sarah took a deep breath. This was it. She activated her own holographic display showing images and data. "Honorable Council members," she began, her voice steady and clear. "You call us chaotic. We call it adaptability. You call us violent. We call it the ability to protect ourselves and others. You call us unpredictable. We call it creative thinking." She changed the display to show Earth. "We come from a death world. That's what your own scientists labeled it. High gravity, extreme weather, thousands of predator species, diseases that evolve faster than most species in this galaxy can adapt. We didn't evolve in paradise. We evolved in hell. And we survived. Some of the council members shifted uncomfortably. It was true. Earth was classified as one of the most dangerous habitable worlds ever discovered. Most species would die within days there without protection. You say we gave technology to the Yala, Sarah continued. Yes, we did. Because they were dying. Because we have a saying on Earth, with great power comes great responsibility. We had the power to save them, so we did. Is compassion now a crime? The law is the law, a council member called out. If we make exceptions, chaos follows. Sarah spun to face the speaker. Your laws were written by species who never knew true hardship, who never faced extinction, who never had to fight for every scrap of survival. You've had peace for so long that you've forgotten why strength matters. Are you threatening us? Another representative demanded. No, Sarah said firmly. I'm trying to make you understand. Humanity hasn't been trying to disrupt your peace. We've been trying to strengthen it. Because we know something you've forgotten. Peace isn't the natural state of the universe. Peace is something you have to protect. You have to be ready to defend it. First speaker's colors rippled. We have defended peace for millennia without becoming warriors. Have you? Sarah asked. Or have you just been lucky? You've had no major threats, no invasions from outside the known galaxy, no existential dangers. You've lived in a bubble of safety and called it enlightenment. The chamber erupted in angry sounds. Sarah had crossed a line, but she didn't care anymore. She could see it in their faces, their energy patterns, their body language. They had already decided. This trial was just for show. First speaker raised a crystalline limb, calling for silence. Ambassador Chen, your passion is noted. But passion is part of the problem. Humanity feels too much, acts too quickly, thinks too little about consequences. We think plenty about consequences, Sarah shot back. That's why we prepare. That's why we train. That's why we study war, even in times of peace. Not because we want war, but because we want to prevent it. We remember our own history, the times we weren't prepared, the times people died because we were too slow, too weak, too naive. She pulled up historical records from Earth. Wars, disasters, near-extinction events. We came from this. We survived this. And we learned from it. Every other species in this council evolved on easy worlds. You had time to develop philosophy before you needed weapons. You could afford to be peaceful. We couldn't. And that doesn't make us evil. It makes us realistic. The Valerian representative spoke again, her telepathic voice calm. That is precisely why you must leave. Your realism, as you call it, is poison to the peace we have built. You make others doubt. You make them fear. You remind them that the universe can be cruel. We don't need that reminder. Sarah felt her last hope dying. So you'd rather live in a comfortable lie than face an uncomfortable truth? We would rather live in peace, first speaker said. The vote will now commence. All those in favor of expelling humanity from the Galactic Council and restricting them to their home system, signify now. Around the chamber, lights began to glow. Each species had their own way of voting. The Zothan glowed blue. The Kortian raised their claws. The Valerians released pulses of telepathic agreement. Sarah watched as the votes came in. 39 glowing lights. 39 species saying humanity didn't belong. Only 8 lights remained dark. 8 species who voted against the expulsion. Sarah noted them. She would remember those 8. They were the only ones who gave humanity a chance. The vote is decided, first speaker announced. Humanity is hereby expelled from the Galactic Council. All human vessels, stations, and personnel must return to the Sol system within 90 standard days. A quantum barrier will be erected around your home system. You will not be able to leave. No one will be able to enter. You will be isolated until such time as your species evolves beyond its violent nature. Sarah felt numb. She had expected this, but hearing it made it real. How long? She asked quietly. That is up to you, first speaker said. When your species has learned true peace, when you have abandoned your weapons and your warrior ways, you may petition for readmission. We estimate it will take at least 500 years, perhaps 1,500 years. Entire generations would live and die in isolation. Humanity would be cut off from the greater galaxy, from all the wonders and knowledge out there. They would be prisoners in their own solar system. Sarah stood tall. She wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing her break. We'll return, she said, her voice cold and hard. Maybe not in 500 years. Maybe not in 1,000. But we'll be back. And when we return, you'll see what humanity really is. Threats will not help your case, a council member said. That's not a threat, Sarah replied. It's a promise. You're making a mistake. One day you'll need us. You'll face something you can't handle with philosophy and committee meetings. And when that day comes, you'll remember that you threw away the one species that could have helped you. First speaker's colors dimmed further. This council session is concluded. Ambassador Chen, you have 90 days. Sarah didn't bow, didn't show any sign of respect. She simply turned and walked toward the exit. Behind her, she could hear the council members talking, probably congratulating themselves on restoring order. They didn't understand. They thought humanity was the problem. They would learn. Outside the chamber, Sarah's security team waited. They were all human, all wearing the dark blue uniforms of Earth's diplomatic corps. One of them, a young man named Marcus, stepped forward. Ma'am, what happened? Sarah kept walking. We're going home, Marcus, all of us. Every human in galactic space. We have 90 days to evacuate everything. They actually did it, another guard asked, a woman named Yuki. They actually kicked us out? 39-8, Sarah confirmed. Start spreading the word. Contact every human ship, every colony, every outpost. We're leaving. As they walked to their ship, Sarah looked back at the massive council chamber one last time. It hung there in space, beautiful and serene, a symbol of galactic unity and peace. She felt a mix of anger and sadness. Humanity had tried so hard to fit in. But maybe that was the problem. Maybe they were never meant to fit in. The journey back to Earth took 3 weeks. During that time, Sarah wrote her final report. She detailed everything that had happened, everything that had been said. She made recommendations for what humanity should do next. At the top of the list, survive, adapt, grow stronger. And remember, when she finally reached Earth, the news had already spread. People were angry. Some wanted to fight back, to refuse the expulsion. But the government had already decided they would comply. They would leave peacefully, not because they were afraid, but because fighting now would only prove the council right. The evacuation was the largest operation in human history. Thousands of ships moved through space, carrying people and equipment back to Sol. Human colonies outside the solar system were abandoned. Advanced research stations were dismantled. Trade agreements were dissolved. Within 87 days, every human was back in the Sol system. On day 90, the barrier went up. Sarah watched from a station orbiting Mars as the quantum field spread across the edge of their solar system. It looked like a soap bubble, thin and shimmering, but it was stronger than any physical wall. Nothing could pass through it. Not ships, not signals, not even light beyond a certain frequency. Humanity was alone. Sarah thought about her final words to the council. She had promised they would return. As she watched the barrier complete its formation, sealing them in, she made that promise again. To herself, to her species, to every human who would come after. They would survive. They would adapt. They would grow. And one day, when the galaxy least expected it, humanity would return, not as supplicants begging for acceptance, but as something more, something stronger. The council thought 500 years would change humanity. They were right. But not in the way they imagined. The galaxy celebrated for exactly 1 month after humanity's expulsion. There were parties on diplomatic worlds. Council members gave speeches about a new era of peace and stability. Cultural programs were launched to promote true civilization and proper thinking. The message was clear. Order had been restored. But celebrations fade, and life goes on. 50 years after the expulsion, the first cracks began to show. Not in the barrier around Sol, which remained perfect and impenetrable. The cracks appeared in galactic society itself. On the Valerian homeworld, a group of young artists staged a protest. They wanted to perform music that didn't follow traditional patterns. Music that was chaotic and emotional, music that sounded suspiciously human. The collective's elders shut down the performance and sent the artists for re-education. But the recording spread anyway, passed secretly through underground networks. On a Corsian colony world, engineers proposed a new ship design that violated standard conventions. It was asymmetrical and unpredictable, designed to confuse enemies rather than intimidate them. The proposal was rejected immediately. "We don't build ships that way," the review board said. "It's not proper." But the engineer kept the designs, wondering why proper had to mean boring. These were small things, tiny rebellions. Most people in the galaxy didn't even notice them. Life continued as it had for centuries. Trade routes ran on schedule. Disputes were settled through proper channels. Art and science advanced in predictable, comfortable ways. The council met regularly, discussing important matters with careful deliberation. They managed resources. They mediated conflicts. They maintained the peace. And if that peace felt a little stale, a little hollow, well, that was the price of civilization. 100 years passed. Then 200. The younger species who had been alive during humanity's trial died off. New generations took their place, generations who only knew humans as cautionary tales. Stories parents told children about the violent species who had to be locked away for everyone's safety. Some of the older council members occasionally wondered about the humans. Were they still alive behind that barrier? Had they destroyed themselves in some violent conflict? A few suggested checking, but first speaker, now ancient even by Zathan standards, always said the same thing. Let them be. If they have learned peace, they will petition for release. If they have not, we are safer with them contained. Nobody questioned this logic. Nobody suggested that maybe, just maybe, the barrier was a mistake. 300 years after the expulsion, a Caesarian scientist named Velthra began studying ancient records. She was young, barely 50 years old, born long after humans had vanished from galactic society. Her research focused on military history, a field considered quaint and outdated. After all, the galaxy hadn't seen a real war in over 1,000 years. Velthra found something interesting in the archives. Reports from the brief time humans had been part of the council. She read about their tactical simulations, their war games, their obsessive study of conflict. She found human entertainment programs that the Valerians had banned, stories about soldiers and battles and survival against impossible odds. They were so strange, she told her mentor, an elderly Caesarian named Talmar. They thought about violence constantly, but they weren't violent. They prepared for wars they didn't want to fight. They honored warriors but mourned every death. I don't understand them. Tolmar, who had been alive during the human era, chittered softly. No one understood them. That was the problem. They didn't fit our patterns. They scared us, so we removed them. Was that the right choice? Velthra asked. Tolmar didn't answer. He just looked toward the star charts, toward the region where Sul existed behind its barrier, and said nothing. 400 years passed. The galaxy settled into comfortable routines. Innovation slowed to a crawl. Why invent new things when the old ways worked perfectly well? Why take risks when safety was guaranteed? Why question anything when everything ran smoothly? A few voices called for change. They were ignored or silenced. The council had perfected peace, and perfection needed no improvement. But behind the barrier, in the prison of Sol, a very different story was unfolding. The first 50 years were the hardest. Humanity had been cut off from alien technology, alien resources, alien knowledge. They had only what they could build themselves. Some people panicked. Some fell into despair. Riots broke out on Earth and Mars. People demanded that their government do something, break through the barrier, force the council to take them back. But slowly, humanity adapted. They always did. Scientists and engineers worked day and night, reverse engineering the alien technology they had acquired before the expulsion. They couldn't replicate everything, but they learned principles. They found new approaches, human creativity, unconstrained by alien rules and expectations, began to flourish. We don't have to do it their way, a young physicist named Dr. Sarah Okonkwo declared at a conference on Luna. The council species all use quantum drives for FTL travel. But that's not the only way. Einstein said space and time are connected. What if we don't move through space? What if we fold it? Other scientists called her crazy. The mathematics didn't work. The energy requirements were impossible. But Okonkwo kept trying, and eventually she found a solution. It required massive computational power and an understanding of dimensional physics that no alien species had achieved. But humans, with their chaos and creativity, made it work. 100 years after the expulsion, the first human ship folded space. It didn't travel faster than light. It made light irrelevant. The ship went from Mars to Jupiter in minutes, not hours. The technology was crude and dangerous, but it was theirs. Meanwhile, humanity faced other challenges. Resources were limited. The Sol system was rich but finite. Conflicts arose over mining rights, living space, and ideology. Wars broke out, small ones at first, then larger. The asteroid belt became a battlefield. Earth and Mars almost destroyed each other over water rights. For a terrible decade, it looked like humanity would do exactly what the Council had predicted, destroy itself in violence. But something unexpected happened. The survivors of these conflicts looked at the ruins they had created and made a choice, not to give up violence that was impossible for a species forged in Earth's crucible. Instead, they chose to direct it, channel it, control it. The Human Confederacy was formed 200 years after the expulsion. It wasn't a single government, but a loose alliance of dozens of factions, colonies, and cultural groups. They didn't always agree. They argued constantly, but they had rules about those arguments, ways to settle disputes without destroying each other. We are humanity, the founding document declared. We are diverse, chaotic, and passionate. We are warriors and poets, scientists and dreamers. We do not fit simple patterns because we are not simple beings, and that is our strength. The Confederacy didn't try to make humans peaceful. Instead, it created structures for their energy. Competitive games replaced some wars. Virtual combat replaced others. When conflicts couldn't be resolved peacefully, the Confederacy had protocols, making sure fights stayed limited and survivors were treated with honor. It wasn't perfect. People still died. Mistakes were still made, but humanity survived. As centuries passed, humans spread throughout the Sol system. They built habitats in the asteroid belt. They terraformed parts of Mars. They created floating cities in Venus's upper atmosphere. They established research stations on the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. They even sent long-range probes to the edges of the barrier, studying it, learning from it. Some humans changed themselves. Genetic engineering became common, creating variations adapted to different environments. Some had enhanced muscles for high gravity. Others had improved lungs for thin atmospheres. A few went further, merging with machines or altering their brains to process information faster. By year 400, humanity was no longer a single species, but a family of related subspecies. And they all remembered the Council, the betrayal, the isolation. Some wanted revenge. Others wanted to prove themselves. A few didn't care about the Council at all, focused on survival and growth. But they all knew one thing. Eventually, the barrier would come down. One way or another. 500 years after the expulsion, Velthra was now chief historian of the Galactic Council. She had spent her life studying the past, trying to understand the patterns of history, and she had noticed something troubling. The galaxy is stagnant, she reported to the current first speaker, a Valerian named Sorchen. In the past 500 years, we have made almost no significant advances in technology, art, or philosophy. We are stable, but we are not growing. Sorchen's telepathic presence felt calm, unconcerned. Stability is growth. Peace is progress. Is it? Velthra challenged. I've studied the records from before humanity's expulsion. In those 23 years, we saw more innovation than in the previous century. Human ideas pushed us. Their chaos made us think differently. Their chaos was dangerous, Sorchen replied. We removed the danger. We removed the spark, Velthra countered. And now we're dying. Not quickly, not violently. We're dying of boredom and complacency. Other council members dismissed her concerns. The galaxy was fine. Everything was under control. Velthra's worries were noted and filed away, just like countless other reports that challenged the status quo. Then came the first anomaly. A science vessel near the edge of Council space detected something impossible. A ship that wasn't using quantum drives. A ship that appeared on sensors, then vanished, then appeared somewhere else entirely. The crew thought their equipment was malfunctioning. More sightings followed. Strange vessels at the edges of known space. moving in ways that violated every law of physics the Council knew. They never approached inhabited worlds, never communicated, just appeared, observed, and vanished. Pirates? One Council member suggested. A new species? Another proposed. Velthra looked at the data and felt a chill run through her exoskeleton. She had seen similar signatures before, in ancient records from 500 years ago. Human ship designs from before the expulsion, but evolved, advanced, impossible. She went to first speaker Sorchen with her theory. The humans are outside the barrier. Impossible, Sorchen said. The barrier is perfect. Nothing can pass through it. Then how do you explain these readings? Sensor errors, space anomalies, anything but humans. They are contained. They must be. But Velthra wasn't convinced. She started tracking the sightings, plotting them on star charts. There was a pattern. The ships were surveying, mapping, learning, and they were getting closer to inhabited space. She tried to warn the Council, but they wouldn't listen. The barrier had held for 500 years. It would hold forever. Humans were a solved problem, a footnote in history. The galaxy had moved on. Then the Ravagers arrived. They came from dark space, from the void between galaxies where nothing should exist. The first world that detected them was a mining colony on the edge of Council territory. The colony sent a distress signal, then went silent. A Council patrol arrived 3 days later and found nothing. The planet was gone. Not destroyed. Not damaged. Gone, consumed down to the core, leaving only debris and dust. More colonies vanished. More worlds disappeared. The Council scrambled to respond, sending fleets to investigate. They found the enemy. Massive organic ships, millions of them moving like a swarm. They didn't communicate. Didn't negotiate. Just consumed everything in their path. The Council fleets engaged the Ravagers in battle. It went poorly. The alien swarm adapted to every weapon, every tactic. Ships that should have destroyed them barely slowed them down. Strategies that had worked in simulations failed in practice. The Ravagers kept coming. Panic spread through the galaxy. Refugees fled core ward, abandoning their homes. The Council declared a state of emergency. They mobilized every ship, every resource, and still the Ravagers advanced. In her office, Velthra watched the casualty reports pile up. Billions dead, dozens of worlds lost. The Council's carefully maintained peace was burning, and no one knew how to stop it. She pulled up old records again. Human military theory, human tactical doctrine, human entertainment programs about impossible wars and unlikely victories. She read one quote from a human general, from Earth's own violent history. No battle plan survives contact with the enemy. The Council had battle plans. Perfect plans. Plans created through careful analysis and committee decisions. And every single one was failing because the Ravagers didn't follow the rules. But humans had never followed the rules either. Velthra made a decision that would change everything. She went to the Council with a proposal so radical, so desperate, that she knew it would be rejected. Unless things got worse. Things got worse. Another 20 worlds fell. The Ravagers' advance accelerated. They were learning, evolving, becoming more efficient. At the current rate, they would reach the core systems within a standard year. After that, the galaxy would fall. Finally, with no other options left, the Council voted. The decision was close, much closer than it had been 500 years before. But it passed. They would ask the humans for help. The war room deep inside the Council station was filled with holographic displays showing the advance of the Ravagers. Red markers indicated lost worlds. Yellow showed worlds under attack. Blue represented the remaining Council fleets. The blue markers were disappearing faster than new ones could be deployed. Admiral Kreshitar of the Korshan Imperial Fleet stared at the displays with growing despair. He had commanded fleets for 200 years, fought in border skirmishes and pirate raids. He had studied every military conflict in recorded galactic history. None of it prepared him for this. They adapt too quickly, he told the assembled commanders. We hit them with plasma weapons. They develop resistance within hours. We try kinetic strikes. They disperse and reform. We attempt flanking maneuvers. They predict and counter. It's like fighting an opponent who learns from every mistake instantly. A Valerian tactical officer pulsed agreement through the telepathic network. Our simulations show that at their current rate of adaptation, no conventional weapon will remain effective within 3 months. They are becoming immune to everything we have. What about unconventional weapons? Someone asked. Kreshitar's mandibles clicked in frustration. We don't have unconventional weapons. We have protocols, standards, approved methods of engagement. Everything we do follows doctrine established over millennia. Then perhaps it's time to abandon doctrine, Velthra said from the back of the room. All eyes turned to her. She was just a historian, not a military officer. She had no business being in the war room at all except that her research had become suddenly relevant. Abandon doctrine? Kreshtar repeated, his voice incredulous. Young one, doctrine exists because it works. It has been refined over thousands of years of experience. Experience fighting pirates and border disputes, Velthra countered. When was the last time the Council faced an existential threat? When did you last fight an enemy that wanted to consume everything? The room fell silent. The answer was never. In all of recorded galactic history, the Council had never faced total war. They had never needed to. I've been studying human military history, Velthra continued. They had a concept called total war. Conflicts where entire civilizations mobilized every resource, where there were no rules, no limits, where survival was the only goal. Barbaric, a Valerian commander said. Effective, Velthra replied. Humans fought wars that should have destroyed them. Wars with no clear victory condition, against enemies that seemed invincible. And they won, not by being stronger or having better technology, but by being unpredictable, by thinking creatively, by refusing to accept that defeat was inevitable. Kreshtar studied her for a long moment. What are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we need help. Help from the only species in known space that actually understands how to fight this kind of war. The room erupted in argument. Half the commanders rejected the idea immediately. The humans were locked away for good reason. They were dangerous, unpredictable. Bringing them back would be admitting the Council had made a mistake. But the other half looked at the displays, at the advancing red markers, and wondered if pride was worth dying for. The debate raged for 3 days. During those 3 days, 5 more worlds fell to the Ravagers. 12 billion sentient beings were consumed. Council fleets attempted 6 different engagement strategies, all failures. The military was running out of ideas. On the 4th day, First Speaker Sorchen made an announcement. The Council has voted. We will send a diplomatic mission to the Sol system. We will ask humanity for assistance in defending the galaxy against the Ravager threat. The vote had been 31 in favor, 16 against. Much closer than the vote to expel humanity had been. Some Council members still believed they could win without help. Others believed humanity would refuse and it would be a wasted effort. But enough were desperate enough to try. Velthra volunteered to lead the mission immediately. She expected to be rejected, too young and inexperienced for such an important task. Instead, Sorchen approved her request. You studied them, the first speaker said. You understand them better than anyone alive in the Council. And you were not part of the decision to expel them. Perhaps that matters. A fleet of 12 ships was assembled, not warships but diplomatic vessels. Though they carried weapons for defense, no one knew what they would find at Sol. Were the humans still alive? Had they descended into barbarism? Had they evolved beyond violence as the Council hoped? Or had they become something else entirely? The journey to Sol took 2 weeks. As they approached the barrier, Velthra reviewed everything she knew about humans. Their history of warfare, their capacity for forgiveness, their tendency to help others even at cost to themselves, their pride, their anger, their hope. She had no idea how they would respond to the Council's request. She hoped they would help. She feared they would not. She worried they might do something completely unexpected, something no one had considered. The fleet emerged from FTL travel at the edge of the quantum barrier. It shimmered before them, a wall of twisted space-time that had held for 5 centuries. Scanners showed nothing beyond it. The barrier was designed to block all signals, all sensors, all communication. We're broadcasting on all frequencies, the communications officer reported. Standard diplomatic codes. Requesting permission to enter and negotiate. They waited. Minutes passed. Then hours. The fleet hung in space, 12 ships facing an impenetrable wall, hoping someone on the other side was listening. Then suddenly something changed. A section of the barrier rippled. Space itself seemed to tear open, and through that tear came ships. They were beautiful and terrifying, sleek black hulls that seemed to absorb light. Designs that were almost organic, flowing like living creatures rather than mechanical constructs. They moved without visible engines, sliding through space with perfect grace. The Council's sensors went wild, detecting energy signatures that made no sense. physics that violated known laws. How many? Velthra asked, her voice barely a whisper. 43, the sensor officer replied. No, wait. More appearing. 70, 90. They're folding space, appearing from nowhere. Over 200 now. Still counting. Are they hostile? Unknown. They're surrounding us, but weapons are not charging. They're just watching. Velthra took a deep breath. This was it. First contact with humanity after 500 years of isolation. She opened a communication channel. This is Ambassador Velthra of the Galactic Council. We come in peace, requesting permission to speak with representatives of humanity. Static. Then a voice speaking in the common galactic language, but with an accent that sent chills through Velthra. The accent of someone who had learned the language from records, not from interaction. This is Captain Sarah Okonkwo Chen of the Human Confederacy Navy. You have entered restricted space. State your purpose. The surname caught Velthra's attention. Okonkwo Chen, a combination of two names from human records. One of them had been the physicist who developed space-folding technology. The other had been the ambassador who faced the Council 500 years ago. This captain was likely descended from both. The symbolism was not lost on anyone. We seek assistance, Velthra said simply. The galaxy is under attack by an alien force we cannot defeat. We are requesting aid in defense of all sentient life. A long pause. Then, why should we help you? It was the question Velthra had been dreading. Because billions are dying. Because they are innocent of the crimes committed against your people. Because helping others is the right thing to do regardless of past grievances. Another pause. Velthra could imagine the humans on the other side debating, arguing, discussing. Were they still the same species the Council had expelled? Or had isolation changed them into something new? You will follow our ships, Captain Okonkwo Chen finally said. Do not deviate from the designated course. Do not activate weapons. Do not scan our vessels or installations. We will take you to Mars, where the Confederacy Council will decide whether to hear your petition. Agreed, Velthra said quickly. The human ships moved with precision, forming an escort around the Council fleet. Then space folded and they were moving, not through FTL in the traditional sense. One moment they were at the barrier's edge. The next Mars was visible ahead, massive and alive. Velthra stared in shock. She had seen records of Mars before humanity's expulsion. A cold, dusty world with a few small colonies. This was nothing like that. The entire planet seemed to glow with city lights. Orbital rings circled it like jewelry. Hundreds of ships moved in organized patterns. This wasn't a colony. This was a civilization. 500 years, she whispered. What did you become? Their ships were directed to dock at a massive station orbiting Mars. As Velthra and her delegation disembarked, they found themselves in a corridor that was clearly designed to impress or intimidate. The walls displayed holographic images, human achievements over the past 5 centuries, megastructures in the asteroid belt, terraformed moons, technological breakthroughs, and military victories against themselves. Humans fighting humans in conflicts that made the Council's recent battles look like training exercises. A reception committee waited for them. 20 humans representing different factions of the Confederacy. They were diverse in ways the Council members found unsettling. Some looked baseline human. Others had obvious enhancements. Metallic implants, glowing eyes, skin that shimmered with nanite colonies. One appeared to be more machine than organic. Another seemed to phase slightly, as if not entirely in this dimension. The leader stepped forward. She was an older woman, her hair white but her posture military straight. Her eyes were enhanced, glowing faintly blue. When she spoke, her voice carried authority earned through experience, not protocol. I am High Coordinator Marcus. Welcome to the Confederacy. You have asked for our help? Before we discuss that, you need to understand what you're asking for. She gestured and the holographic displays changed. Now they showed battles. Human ships fighting unknown enemies in simulated combat. Tactics that were aggressive, creative, and often seemingly suicidal. Flanking maneuvers that required perfect timing. Kamikaze runs that sacrificed ships to create openings. Psychological warfare that targeted enemy morale. We are not the species you expelled, Marcus continued. 500 years of isolation changed us. We had to fight for every resource. We had to innovate or die. We became harder, more efficient, more dangerous. If we help you, we will do things your way. We will use methods you find disturbing. We will take risks you consider unacceptable. And we will expect you to trust us. Velthra met the woman's enhanced gaze. Show us the Ravagers. Show us what we're fighting. The displays changed again. Velthra provided data from Council encounters with the swarm. Composition, tactics, adaptive capabilities. The humans studied everything in silence. Finally, one of them spoke. A younger man with cybernetic enhancements covering half his face. They're not a hive mind. Look at the pattern distribution. They're networked, but with distributed intelligence. Each unit has some autonomy but shares information with the collective. How can you tell that? A council military advisor asked. Because we've fought networked enemies before, the man replied. Against each other. During the Belt Wars, the Titan Collective used similar tactics. We learned how to counter them. You fought wars against yourselves. The council advisor sounded horrified. Of course, Marcus said simply. We're human, we fight, but we learn from it. Every conflict makes us better at the next one. That's what you need. Not a species that fears violence, but a species that understands it. The humans debated among themselves, speaking in rapid-fire exchanges that the council translators struggled to keep up with. They argued, disagreed, challenged each other's ideas. It was chaos, but it was productive chaos. Within an hour, they had identified potential weaknesses in the Ravager swarm that council analysts had missed in months of study. They adapt quickly, but adaptation requires processing time, a tactical specialist explained. If you hit them with multiple different attack types simultaneously, they can't adjust fast enough. The problem is your fleets don't train for that kind of coordinated assault. We can learn, Kreshitar said. He had accompanied the delegation as military liaison. Not fast enough, Marcus replied bluntly. Your crews are trained for precision and protocol. Ours are trained for chaos and improvisation. You need us, so you'll help? Velthra asked, hope rising in her chest. Marcus looked at her delegation. That depends. What are you offering? What do you want? The barrier comes down, permanently. Full reinstatement in the council with all rights and privileges. Reparations for 500 years of forced isolation, and a formal apology, delivered by First Speaker Sorchen personally. The demands hung in the air. The council advisors looked uncomfortable. It was too much, too humiliating. But Velthra thought about the billions already dead. The world's already lost. The red markers advancing on the strategic displays. I can't promise all of that, she said. But I can promise to advocate for it. Marcus smiled, but it wasn't a friendly expression. Then advocate hard, Ambassador. Because every day you delay, more people die. And every death makes us less inclined to risk our lives for yours. She was right, and Velthra knew it. The humans held all the leverage. They could sit behind their barrier and watch the galaxy burn. The council needed them far more than they needed the council. Give us time, Velthra said. Come with us. Meet the council. Let them see what you've become. Let them understand what you can do. The humans conferred again. Finally, Marcus nodded. We'll send a battle group. 50 ships, enough to make a difference in a single engagement. Not enough to win the war alone. Consider it a demonstration. If the council wants our full support, they'll meet our terms. If not, we return home and seal the barrier behind us. It wasn't everything Velthra hoped for, but it was more than she feared. Thank you, she said sincerely. Marcus's expression softened slightly. Don't thank us yet, Ambassador. You're about to see what happens when you let humans off the leash. It won't be pretty, but it will be effective. The journey back to council space was tense. Velthra's diplomatic fleet traveled alongside 50 human warships, and the contrast was stark. The council vessels were elegant, designed as much for appearance as function. The human ships were pure predators, sleek black, and covered in weapon ports that could deploy in seconds. Captain Okonkwo Chen commanded the human fleet from her flagship, a vessel she called the Vindication. Velthra thought the name was appropriate. The humans had spent 500 years waiting for this moment, proving they were more than the council believed them to be. During the trip, Velthra spent time learning about modern humanity. She toured the Vindication, meeting crew members who represented the diverse factions of the Confederacy. Some were baseline humans, unchanged from their ancestors. Others had chosen enhancements, stronger muscles, better reflexes, enhanced cognition. A few had gone further, becoming something between human and machine or human and something else entirely. Why do you allow such diversity? Belthra asked Captain Okonkwo-chen as they stood on the observation deck. Doesn't it create conflict? The captain smiled. Constantly. We argue about everything. Ethics of enhancement, resource allocation, cultural differences. Sometimes those arguments turn violent. That's terrible. That's human, Okonkwo-chen corrected. We're not a hive mind. We don't think the same way or want the same things, but we've learned to channel that conflict productively. Our diversity makes us stronger, because every problem can be approached from multiple angles. The Council believes uniformity creates strength. The Council is dying because of that belief, the captain said bluntly. Your species have been following the same patterns for millennia. When something new appears, something that doesn't fit your patterns, you have no idea how to respond. You're like an organism that never developed an immune system because you lived in a sterile environment. Belthra wanted to argue, but she couldn't. The captain was right. The Ravagers had exposed every weakness in Council doctrine, every gap in their thinking. They had been so focused on maintaining peace that they forgot how to fight for it. Will you teach us? Belthra asked quietly. Okonkwo-chen looked at her with those enhanced eyes that saw more than natural vision allowed. Maybe, if you're willing to learn. But learning from us means accepting that your way isn't the only way. It means admitting the Council made mistakes. Can your people do that? I don't know, Belthra admitted. But I hope so. When the combined fleet arrived at the Council station, they found it surrounded by defensive installations and military vessels. The Council was taking no chances. They didn't know if the humans were coming as saviors or conquerors. First Speaker Sorchen met them in the Council chamber, the same massive room where humanity had been judged 500 years before. But this time the humans weren't petitioners. They were equals. Or perhaps more than equals. High Coordinator Marcus led the human delegation. She walked with confidence, flanked by representatives from different Confederacy factions. Behind them came military advisors, technical specialists, and historians who had studied every aspect of the Ravager threat. First Speaker, Marcus said, her voice echoing through the chamber. We meet under unfortunate circumstances. Sorchen's telepathic presence felt strained, uncomfortable. High Coordinator, the Council is grateful that humanity has answered our call for aid. We haven't answered yet, Marcus corrected. We've come to listen. Whether we help depends on what we hear. The Council members shifted uneasily. They weren't used to being spoken to this way. For millennia, they had been the ultimate authority in known space. Now they were supplicants. What do you want to know? Sorchen asked. Everything. Show us the full scope of the war. Don't hide anything. Don't make yourselves look better than you are. We need truth, not politics. For the next 6 hours, Council military advisors presented data. Casualty reports, lost worlds, failed strategies, fleet deployments, economic impacts. The sheer scale of the disaster was staggering. Over 50 worlds consumed, 30 billion sentients dead, hundreds of fleets destroyed or scattered, and the Ravagers were still advancing. The human delegation listened in silence, their enhanced minds processing information faster than normal beings could. They took notes, asked technical questions, and occasionally conferred among themselves in rapid speech. Finally, Marcus stood. We can help you, but you need to understand the cost. Name your price, Sorchen said. Not that kind of cost. I mean the cost of what you're asking us to do. War isn't clean. It isn't pretty. People will die even on your side. We'll make decisions that seem cruel. We'll sacrifice lives to save others. We'll use tactics that you'll find morally questionable. Are you prepared for that? The chamber fell silent. These were things the Council didn't talk about. In their carefully ordered civilization, every life was precious. Every decision went through committees. Every action was weighed and measured. If we don't accept, Sorchen asked, what happens? The Ravagers consume the galaxy. Everyone dies anyway. At least our way, some survive. Admiral Kreshitar stood from his section. I have studied human military history. I have seen the records of your wars. You are right that your methods are brutal, but I have also seen that they work. We can afford to be squeamish, or we can afford to survive. Not both. Other Council members began speaking, some in support, others in opposition. The debate raged as it always did, careful and measured and slow. The humans watched with expressions that mixed pity and frustration. We don't have time for this, one of the human advisors muttered to Marcus. Let them talk, Marcus replied. They need to convince themselves. Eventually, Sorchen called for a vote. The question: would the Council accept human military command of defensive operations with full authority to conduct the war as they saw fit? The vote was close, 27 in favor, 20 against, but it passed. Then we're agreed, Marcus said. Effective immediately, all Council military forces will fall under Confederacy command structure. We'll need complete access to your ship specifications, crew capabilities, and resource inventories. We'll also need authorization to recruit volunteers from your populations for specialized training. You'll train our people? Velthra asked. Those willing to learn. We can't turn your entire military into human-style fighters, but we can teach adaptive thinking, how to respond to unexpected situations, how to improvise when plans fail. What about your demands? A council member asked. The barrier, the apology, the reparations? Marcus smiled coldly. We'll discuss that after we save your civilization. Right now, focus on survival. Politics can wait. The transformation began immediately. Human advisors spread throughout Council space, embedding with military units. They assessed capabilities, identified strengths and weaknesses, and began training programs that shocked conventional commanders. Stop thinking in formations, Adiatori, human tactical instructors shouted at a group of Corsian pilots. The Ravagers don't care about your perfect battle lines. They'll flow around them, exploit gaps, hit from unexpected angles. You need to think like water, adapt to the container, find the cracks, flow where they're weak. The pilots struggled. They had been trained for precision, not improvisation. But slowly, with the human instructors pushing them hard, they began to understand. On another training ground, Valerian telepaths worked with human psychological warfare specialists. You're telepathic, the human said. That's an advantage the Ravagers don't have. Use it. Coordinate in real time. Share information instantly. But more than that, project confusion. The swarm is networked. If you can disrupt their communication even briefly, you create openings. We've never used our abilities as weapons, a Valerian protested. Then learn. War isn't about what you want to do. It's about what you must do to survive. Not everyone adapted. Some council officers resigned rather than follow human methods. Some species found the training too aggressive, the expectations too demanding. But enough stayed and enough learned. Slowly, the council's military began to change. Meanwhile, human engineers examined council ships and shook their heads in disappointment. These are beautiful, one engineer told Admiral Kreshtar, but they're built for show. Half the internal space is wasted on aesthetics. Your power distribution is inefficient. Your weapons are standardized when they should be varied. And don't even get me started on your armor configuration. Can you improve them? Kreshtar asked. Not enough, not quickly. These ships are fundamentally designed for peacetime operations, but we can outfit them with some of our weapons, upgrade their sensors, and teach your crews better tactical positioning. It won't make them equal to our ships, but it'll make them more survivable. The humans also brought their own technology, weapons that folded space to strike targets instantly, defensive fields that redirected attacks to alternate dimensions, communication systems that couldn't be jammed or intercepted, mining drones that could strip an asteroid in hours, providing raw materials for rapid ship construction. Where did you get all this? Velthra asked Captain Okonkwo Chen as she toured a human manufacturing facility that had been deployed in the asteroid belt. We invented it, we had to. The barrier trapped us, but it also forced us to innovate. We couldn't trade for technology, couldn't borrow ideas from other species. Everything we have, we created from scratch or reverse engineered from what we remembered. It's remarkable. It's survival. You learn or you die. That's the fundamental truth the Council forgot. 3 weeks after the humans arrived, the first joint operation was launched. A Ravager tendril was advancing on a heavily populated system. Council fleets had been avoiding direct engagement, trying to evacuate civilians instead. The humans had a different approach. We hit them here, Captain Okonkwo Chen said, pointing to a spot on the tactical display. This narrow passage is the only FTL route into the system that doesn't require 2 weeks of travel time. The Ravagers will use it because they always take the fastest path. We should defend the planet, a council admiral argued. We should kill the threat before it reaches the planet, Okonkwo Chen countered. Defense is reactive. We need to be proactive. We lay a trap, lure them in, and hit them with everything we have. What if the trap fails? Then we fall back and defend the planet, but the trap won't fail. The confidence was unsettling, but the council officers had agreed to follow human command. The trap was set. Human ships took position in the asteroid field near the passage. Council vessels formed a secondary line further back. Automated weapons platforms were deployed throughout the area, all under human control. The Ravagers arrived exactly as predicted. Thousands of organic ships moving in their characteristic swarm pattern, flowing toward the inhabited system like a living tide. The humans waited. And waited. Council officers watched nervously as the swarm entered the passage. Why weren't they attacking? Hold, Okonkwo Chen ordered. Let them commit. The swarm was halfway through the passage when the captain gave the order. All units, execute. What happened next was chaos incarnate. The asteroid field erupted as hidden weapons fired from every angle. Space itself folded, redirecting attacks from unexpected vectors. Human ships appeared from nowhere, having folded space to skip past normal positioning. Council vessels fired in coordinated waves, different weapon types hitting simultaneously to prevent adaptation. The Ravagers tried to respond, but they couldn't adapt to everything at once. Plasma fire burned through their organic hulls. Kinetic strikes shattered their structure. Dimensional weapons sent sections of the swarm into alternate realities where they couldn't return. In 20 minutes, 80% of the swarm was destroyed. The rest fled, limping back the way they came. The council forces stared in shock. They had just won. Actually won. For the first time since the war began, they had inflicted a decisive defeat on the Ravagers. That's how you fight, Marcus said, from the command center, watching the battle on displays. Not with honor, not with rules. With overwhelming force applied at the enemy's weakest point. Simple, brutal, effective. Word of the victory spread quickly through council space. Hope, which had been dying, flickered back to life. The humans could win this war. Maybe the galaxy had a chance after all. But in the human command center, celebrations were muted. Okonkwo Chen looked at the casualty reports. 12 council ships destroyed. 2,000 crew members dead, 3 human vessels damaged, 50 casualties. First blood, she said quietly. Now comes the hard part. What's the hard part? Velthra asked. Keeping them from hating us. We just showed the council that they need us, that without human help, they'll die. Some will be grateful, but others will resent us for it. They'll remember that we succeeded where they failed. Pride is a powerful poison, Ambassador. And we just forced them to swallow a large dose. Velthra understood. The victory had been necessary, but it had also been humiliating. The council had been fighting for months without success. Humans had arrived and won the first engagement decisively. That would create complications. What do we do? She asked. We keep winning, Okonkwo Chen replied. We keep saving lives. And we hope that when this is over, gratitude outweighs resentment. Because if it doesn't, we'll have saved a galaxy that still hates us. And that would be ironic, wouldn't it? Would you regret helping us? The captain was quiet for a long moment. No, because this is what humans do. We protect people. Even people who hurt us. Even people who don't deserve it. It's our greatest strength and our greatest weakness. We can't help ourselves. Velthra felt a wave of emotion she couldn't quite name. These humans, these violent, chaotic warriors, had more compassion than most council species she knew. They had been wronged, imprisoned, forgotten, and they came anyway when called. Thank you, she said softly. Thank us when it's over, Okonkwo Chen replied. We've got a long war ahead of us. The war raged for 8 months. 8 months of brutal fighting, clever tactics, and tremendous sacrifice. The humans taught the Council forces how to fight adaptively, how to think creatively, how to turn every weakness into potential strength. Slowly, world by world, the tide began to turn. But it was not easy. The Ravagers were learning too. Every victory came at a cost. Ships destroyed, lives lost, entire fleets sometimes sacrificed to achieve strategic objectives. The Council members, who had voted for human military command, began to understand what that truly meant. High Coordinator Marcus stood in the war room, surrounded by holographic displays showing 17 different battle zones. She looked older than she had when they arrived. The weight of command, of choosing who lived and who died, aged even enhanced humans. The Ravagers are pulling back toward this sector, Admiral Crescitar said, pointing to a cluster of systems near the galactic rim. Our intelligence suggests they're consolidating, possibly preparing for a major counterattack. Or retreating to their source, Marcus replied. We've been pushing them back but haven't found their origin point. They have to come from somewhere. A human tactical officer brought up new data. We've been tracking debris from destroyed Ravager ships. The organic material shows increasing genetic degradation the further core ward we find it. That suggests they traveled a long distance before reaching Council space. Their origin is likely in the dark space between galaxies. Can we track them there? Velthra asked. She had become an unofficial liaison between humans and the Council, spending most of her time with the Confederacy forces. We can try, Captain Okonkwo Chen said. She had been promoted to Fleet Admiral after the Battle of Caesarion Prime, where her tactics had saved 12 billion lives. But following them into dark space is risky. We'd be on their territory, facing unknown numbers, with no reinforcements. Then we need to force a decisive engagement before they fully retreat, Marcus decided. Something large enough to break their offensive capability permanently. Over the next week, human strategists developed a plan that made even the most aggressive Council commanders nervous. They would identify the main Ravager fleet, the central node that coordinated all the smaller swarms. Then they would attack it with overwhelming force, risking everything on a single battle. This is insane, a Valerian military advisor protested during the strategy briefing. You're proposing to commit 70% of our combined fleets to one engagement. If we lose everything. If we don't do this, we die slowly instead of quickly, Marcus replied. The Ravagers are adapting to our tactics. Every day they get better at countering us. We have a window of advantage, maybe a few weeks. After that, we're back to losing. How can you be certain the main fleet is where you think it is? A human intelligence officer, her body covered in cybernetic implants that connected her directly to sensor networks, spoke up. We've been tracking communication patterns in the swarm for months. There's a central nexus, a location where all data flows converge. That's where their command structure exists. Kill that, and the rest of the swarm loses coordination. You're gambling the fate of the galaxy on a theory, Sorchin said. We're gambling the fate of the galaxy on human expertise, Marcus corrected. This is what we do. This is what you asked for when you came to Sol. Trust us or don't, but decide now. We don't have time for committee meetings. The Council voted. This time the margin was wider. Desperation had overcome caution. The attack was approved. The largest fleet in galactic history assembled at the staging point. Over 3,000 ships, human vessels with their reality-bending weapons, Council, warships upgraded with human technology, support craft carrying medical supplies and repair drones, and suicide ships piloted by volunteers who knew they wouldn't return. Admiral Okonkwo Chen commanded the fleet from her flagship. Beside her, Admiral Crescitar led the Council forces. Two very different species, two very different philosophies, united by necessity. Strange, isn't it? Crescitar said, as they watched the fleet complete its formation. 500 years ago, my ancestors voted to exile yours. Now we fight side by side. History is full of ironies, Okonkwo Chen replied. The enemy of my enemy becomes my friend. Until the war ends and we remember why we were enemies. Do you think that will happen? When this is over, will humans and the Council become enemies again? I hope not. But humans have a saying. Hope for the best, prepare for the worst. We'll fight this war with you, but we haven't forgotten. We won't forget. The fleet jumped to FTL, a coordinated movement that would have been impossible for the Council military before human training. They emerged at the target location, a region of space where sensors detected massive gravitational anomalies and organic matter concentrations that defied measurement. The Ravagers were waiting. The swarm was enormous, larger than anything they had encountered before. Millions of organic ships, some as small as fighters, others the size of moons. They moved with coordinated precision, forming patterns that seemed almost beautiful if you ignored that they were instruments of extinction. Contact in 30 seconds, the tactical officer announced. All ships report ready. Okonkwo Chen took a deep breath. This was it. Everything came down to this moment. All fleet, this is Admiral Okonkwo Chen. Today we fight not for territory, not for resources, not for ideology. We fight for survival. For every species in this galaxy. For every child who deserves to grow up without fear. The enemy before us is relentless, but so are we. They adapt, but we improvise. They consume, but we create. Today, we show them that life is stronger than hunger. That intelligence is stronger than instinct, that together we are unstoppable. All ships engage. The battle began. What followed was chaos on a scale that defied description. 3,000 ships against millions of organic vessels. Space lit up with weapons fire, explosions, and the strange distortions caused by reality-bending technology. Ships folded space, appearing behind enemy lines. Suicide craft rammed into Ravager nodes, sacrificing themselves to create openings. Council vessels fired in waves, different weapon types cycling to prevent adaptation. The humans had taught well. Council crews that once moved by strict protocol now improvised, responded to changing conditions, covered each other's weaknesses. A Corsian cruiser saved a human destroyer by intercepting a Ravager strike craft, then was saved in turn by a Valerian frigate that appeared from an unexpected vector. In the command center, Okonkwo Chen monitored 17 different battle zones simultaneously, making decisions in seconds that would have taken the Council hours. Third Fleet, push through their left flank. 7th Fleet, fall back and regroup. Suicide Squadron 7, you're cleared for your run. Suicide Squadron acknowledging, came a calm voice. It's been an honor. 30 seconds later, 7 ships loaded with antimatter charges detonated in the heart of a Ravager formation, creating a gap that human strike craft exploited ruthlessly. The casualty count rose. 100 ships destroyed, 200, 500. The numbers were staggering, but they kept fighting because there was no alternative. Then the human intelligence officer shouted, I found it! The Nexus! Coordinates! Transmitted to all fleet elements. On the displays, a massive structure appeared. It looked organic but structured, a grotesque parody of a space station grown from living material. Energy readings from it were off the scale. This was the brain of the swarm, the coordinator, the queen of the hive. All available firepower. Target that structure, Marcus ordered from the command center back in Council space. Everything we have. The fleet converged. Every weapon, every ship that could still fight focused on the Nexus. The Ravagers tried to defend it, forming a living wall of ships around their central mind. But the combined fleet pushed through, accepting horrific losses to get within range. Weapons range in 10 seconds, Okonkwo Chen said. All ships fire on my mark. The Ravagers threw everything at them. Ships exploded. Hulls were breached. Entire sections of the fleet disappeared in seconds. But enough survived. Mark. 3,000 ships, or what remained of them, fired simultaneously. Plasma, kinetic rounds, missiles, dimensional disruptors, reality bombs. Every weapon in the human and Council arsenal unleashed at once. The Nexus tried to defend itself, but there was too much, from too many directions, using too many different principles. The structure shattered. Not explosively, but like something organic dying. It collapsed in on itself, its energy readings dropping to 0 in seconds. And throughout the swarm, something changed. The Ravagers stopped moving with coordination. They began firing randomly, colliding with each other, fleeing in every direction without pattern or purpose. The hive mind was dead, and the individual units had no idea what to do. All ships, continue firing, Okonkwo-chen ordered. Don't let up. Kill everything that moves. It took 6 more hours. 6 hours of sustained combat against an enemy that was no longer coordinated, but was still dangerous. Ships that would have been overwhelming when networked became manageable when isolated. One by one, the Ravager vessels were destroyed. Finally, Admiral Kreshtar made the announcement everyone had been waiting for. All fleet ceasefire. Enemy forces are eliminated or fleeing. The battle is won. The command center erupted in cheers. Council space, watching through communication links, exploded with celebration. The Ravagers were broken. The war, though not completely over, had been decided. Okonkwo-chen allowed herself a moment of relief. Then she looked at the casualty reports. Over 800 ships destroyed. 200,000 casualties, both human and council. The victory had been won, but the price had been terrible. Patch me through to all surviving ships, she said. When the connection was established, she spoke. This is Admiral Okonkwo-chen to all fleet elements. Today you fought with courage and skill. You came from different worlds, different species, different philosophies, but you fought as one. You proved that when we work together, when we combine our strengths and cover our weaknesses, nothing can stop us. Remember this moment. Remember what we achieved together, and honor those who gave everything so that others might live. The cleanup took weeks. Ships were repaired. Wounded were treated. The dead were honored according to their various customs. Smaller Ravager elements were hunted down and eliminated throughout Council space. It would take years to fully secure the galaxy, but the existential threat was over. During this time, negotiations began about humanity's status. The debate was intense. Some council members wanted to simply thank the humans and send them back to Sol. Others argued for full reinstatement. A few suggested that humans should take a leadership role in the reformed galaxy. First speaker Sorchen, who had led the council throughout the crisis, made an announcement. I am resigning my position. The council needs new leadership. Leadership that understands the galaxy has changed. But before I go, there is something I must do. He traveled to Mars, to the same station where Velthra had first negotiated with humanity. High Coordinator Marcus met him in a simple conference room, not the grand chambers where such meetings usually occurred. First speaker, Marcus said. You asked for this meeting. I did. Sorchen's telepathic presence felt heavy with emotion. 500 years ago, I voted to expel humanity. I was younger then, certain that peace required conformity. I was wrong. We were all wrong. We punished you for being different, for refusing to fit our comfortable patterns. And when we faced a threat that our patterns couldn't handle, you saved us anyway. You're apologizing, Marcus said. I am, formally and officially. The Galactic Council was wrong to expel humanity. We let fear overcome wisdom. We valued order over justice. And we paid for that mistake with billions of lives that could have been saved if we had not been so arrogant. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. Thank you. That means more than you know. But an apology isn't enough, I know. That's why I'm here to negotiate the terms of humanity's return. Not as supplicants, but as equals. Perhaps as leaders. The galaxy needs human thinking, human adaptability, human courage. What are you offering? Full reinstatement with voting rights equal to any founding member. A permanent seat on the Security Council. Reparations to be determined by independent arbitration. Removal of the barrier, effective immediately. And a formal restructuring of council law to ensure no species is ever expelled for cultural differences again. That's more generous than I expected. It's less than you deserve. The galaxy owes humanity a debt we can never fully repay. We can only try to do better going forward. The negotiations took 3 months, not because the terms were disputed, but because every detail had to be perfect. The new treaty was called the Charter of Unity, and it fundamentally reformed how the Galactic Council operated. The ceremony was held in the rebuilt council chamber. Representatives from all member species attended, including 8 human delegations representing different Confederacy factions. The barrier around Sol had come down the day before, its quantum generators deactivated after 5 centuries of operation. Velthra, now appointed as council historian for life, read the preamble to the new charter. We, the sentient species of this galaxy, acknowledge that diversity is strength, that different perspectives are valuable, and that unity requires accepting differences rather than eliminating them. We pledge never again to exile a species for cultural reasons. We commit to protecting all life, not just life that thinks like us. We embrace the chaos of creativity, the unpredictability of innovation, and the strength that comes from working together despite our differences. The new first speaker, a young Caesarian chosen specifically because she had not been part of the old power structure, spoke next. The age of comfortable conformity is over. The age of active cooperation begins. We face the galaxy not as identical copies of a perfect template, but as allies with different strengths, covering each other's weaknesses. And we face it together. After the ceremony, Velthra found Admiral Okonkwo Chen standing on an observation deck, looking out at the stars. The Admiral was in civilian clothes now, having retired from active service after the war. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Velthra said, joining her. "All those stars, all those worlds. All saved because you came when called." "We almost didn't," Okonkwo Chen admitted. "The vote in the Confederacy was close. A lot of humans wanted revenge, or at least wanted to stay isolated. We'd built something good in Sol. Coming back to the galaxy meant risking all of that." "Why did you come then?" The Admiral smiled. "Because we're human. Protecting others, even those who wronged us, that's just what we do. We can't help ourselves. It's our nature. Maybe the Council was right to call us chaotic and unpredictable, but they were wrong to think those were weaknesses." "The galaxy has learned that lesson well," Velthra said, "sometimes the hard way. Sometimes lessons have to be hard to stick." Okonkwo Chen looked at the younger historian. "What will you do now? Write about how the humans saved the galaxy? I'll write about how we saved ourselves by finally accepting help. About how pride nearly destroyed us. About how the species we feared became the species we needed most. Future generations should know that story." "Make sure they also know the cost," the Admiral said quietly. 200,000 casualties. 800 ships destroyed. Hundreds of worlds damaged. This wasn't a clean victory. It was brutal and ugly and painful. War always is. "I will, I promise." They stood in silence for a while, watching ships move through space. Human vessels and council vessels flying together now, no longer separate. The barrier was gone. The divisions were healing. The galaxy was learning to be chaotic, adaptive, and strong. 6 months later, a human colony ship arrived in a previously uninhabited system at the edge of council space. The colonists planted a monument on the first world they settled, a simple stone with words carved in multiple languages. Remember the barrier. Remember the exile. Remember the lesson. Different is not dangerous. Different is necessary. Together we are stronger than apart. Never again alone. As humanity spread back into the galaxy, more monuments appeared on more worlds, reminders of what had happened, what had been learned, what must never be forgotten. And in the council chamber, above the seats where representatives met to govern the galaxy, a new phrase was added to the official seal. In human English first, then translated into every language of every member species. Strength through adversity, unity through diversity, and never again alone. The galaxy had changed. Humanity had changed it, not through conquest or force, but by being exactly what they always were: chaotic, creative, passionate, and impossibly brave. The Council had banished them out of fear. The Council had called them back out of desperation, but in the end, the galaxy kept them because they were exactly what civilization needed to survive. Admiral Okonkwo Chen was right. It was ironic. The species deemed too violent for peace became the guardians of that peace. The species deemed too chaotic for civilization became its saviors. The species that the Council tried to forget became impossible to imagine living without. 500 years of exile had not broken humanity. It had forged them into something stronger. And when they returned to the galaxy, they did so not as supplicants but as protectors. Not as outsiders but as essential threads in the great tapestry of galactic civilization. The story of humanity's banishment and return would be told for millennia to come. It would be studied in schools, analyzed by historians, and remembered as the moment when the galaxy learned its most important lesson: that sometimes the things we fear most are the things we need most. That sometimes our salvation comes from the most unexpected places, and that sometimes the ones we push away are the ones who save us in the end. As Velthra wrote in her comprehensive history of the era, the Council thought they were protecting the galaxy from humanity. In truth, they were protecting humanity from a galaxy that did not deserve them. And when that galaxy finally learned to deserve them, humanity came back not with anger but with open arms. because that ultimately is what makes them human.